My name is Vaidila Satvika with the Department of Planning and Urban Design. This is a modified presentation based upon one that was given to City Council on August 22nd, titled Wording Amendments for Small-Scale Residential Infill. This presentation summarizes the adopted changes that City Council passed on August 22nd. This first slide gives an overview of a movement that is becoming known as the missing middle, which highlights the reality that zoning in cities across America has moved away from a diverse type of housing, where primarily at this point we provide a lot of single-family homes, like you see on the left of this image, or larger mid-rise apartments on the right, but we haven't, for about the last 50 to 70 years, been building a lot of what they're calling the missing middle types of housing units that are duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, bungalow courts, and smaller apartment buildings due to changes in zoning in the last 50 years. Nevertheless, this was a part of Asheville's history and an important part of the zoning recommendations. Some key points to keep in mind as you listen to this presentation is that Asheville has a significantly constrained housing market with a very low vacancy rate. In addition, we found that the residential districts are currently not providing the permitted number of housing units, and that within those districts, the housing stock is primarily single family. So we're really missing a lot of variety in our housing units, and we're experiencing a shortage of them. This image shows the timeline of the small-scale residential infill project. This really began in February 2016 with a presentation to the City Council, and for the last year and a half, the Planning Department has been working on public input. We've been collecting recommendations from the public. We had a couple of public workshops. We made many presentations to different community groups, and we did some online surveys, which are highlighted here in summary form on the bottom of the sheet. That shows that primarily there has been significant public support for these recommendations. So let's go into the proposals. The first one is to reduce the minimum lot widths by 20%. The idea here is that the land in Asheville is constrained, and the largest constraint is the current standards for the minimum lot width. So by reducing lot width standards by 20%, we can open up the potential for properties that are large to potentially subdivide. So you see here in the chart, it shows the different zoning districts, and the current versus the proposed, or now in effect, minimum lot widths in those different districts. Note that the reductions to lot width for any property that is affected by the steep slope ordinance would still be affected by that ordinance. So for any property located above 2,200 feet in elevation with more than 15% grade, it is still restricted and governed by those regulations. The next proposal that we gave to City Council was a recommendation to incentivize duplexes. This change would allow duplexes on all parcels in multifamily districts under certain conditions. So if you look at the visual on the left-hand side, you see the current land requirements for a duplex versus the land requirements for a typical home and accessory dwelling unit. Duplexes are required to have twice as much land as homes and ADUs, even though a home and an ADU is considered really two different units, as is a duplex. So we are proposing that we should hold duplexes to the same standard to allow them on the same size lot as homes and ADUs. The third proposal is to incentivize multifamily housing in multifamily zoning districts. The idea is that we would allow additional multifamily units for every 1,000 square feet of parcel area in excess of the minimum lot standards. We learned about this actually from reviewing Asheville's city code in 1948. They had a similar regulation that permitted multifamily units in all residential districts. We are taking that, but giving it a little bit of a twist so that we require more land than was required in the 40s. The proposal would allow for a duplex on a standard multifamily lot, and then for every 1,000 square feet of area, in addition to that minimum lot size, you'd be able to have an additional unit. So you could have a triplex if you had 1,000 extra square feet above the minimum standard. a quadruplex if you had 2,000 square feet more than the minimum, and a fiveplex if you had an additional 1,000 square feet. So this really incentivizes more housing on smaller pieces of land. The fourth proposal goes along with the third one, the incentive for multifamily housing, in that it establishes neighborhood scale design standards for multifamily projects. So this would only be a standard for the multifamily districts, RM6, RM8, and RM16. And what it would seek to do is provide multifamily that is compatible with residential zoning districts. So we're hoping that the new multifamily structures are perhaps something like this image on the left that look like larger apartment houses, but they reflect the single-family typology of residential districts. And the image on the right shows that they could have shared driveways to use the land more efficiently when it comes to parking. This image highlights the key standards that we would require for multifamily projects. Some of the important ones are that the maximum footprint size of the building would be 4,000 square feet. It wouldn't have a gross floor area in excess of 12,000 square feet, maximum of 3 stories, and no more than 12 units per building. Some other standards would include having the parking to the side or the rear and screened by vegetation, and only having one primary entrance to access the property. One related change that our department proposed to the City Council was to increase the parking requirement for properties within a mile of the central business district. Currently, as you can see on the map, the dark line shows the boundaries for the area that exempts off-street parking for residential projects. So this is to say that off-street parking is not required within this area. Although our department recommended to increase the parking requirement, City Council decided to not make any changes at this point. Another related change has to do with driveway widths. The Department of Planning and Urban Design recommended to reduce driveway standards, and the City Council adopted to reduce the minimum driveway width standard without altering the maximum. So currently, for single-family development, the minimum driveway width is 9 feet and the maximum is 18 feet. In summary, the small-scale infill recommendations that were adopted by City Council include a 20% lot width reduction for all residential districts, incentivizing duplexes and multifamily structures in multifamily districts, new neighborhood-scale multifamily design standards for multifamily projects, and associated UDO changes to support these recommendations. For additional information, please visit the city's website for this project.